The most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency is my shepherd. I shall not want. It maketh me to lie down in green pastures. It leadeth me beside the still waters. It restoreth my soul. It leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for its name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. It anointeth my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the most superintelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit forever. What's happening? Benton here in my car outside the motel. Figured I would squeeze in time for a stream. 2 nights in a row of 8 hours of sleep. I don't know what to do with myself. It's interesting reflecting on my time in Los Angeles, also getting uh, long duration, quality, deep sleep for the most part. And then just about 2 months on the road truck driving and getting less of the deep, physically restful sleep. Hang on, we see a, oh man. I see another vacuuming of the car in my future today. There's one of our pests. One of our pests is although intelligently somewhat, seems to be attempting to make an escape out of the vehicle. So hang on, maybe a live and let live. Are you on your way there, partner? Yeah, I think he's figured out there's a little crack in the window. Looks like he gone. All right, buddy. Well, safe travels. Good on you. Maybe not. Where was I? Oh yes, sleep. Um, there's a big difference. I've learned a lot about sleep in my time as a long haul truck driver. So I think what happens for a lot of folks, and this was me for years, I would wake up in the morning sometimes and just feel like just absolute dog shit physically. And I had something of that effect yesterday morning, and it was fairly pronounced this morning. And I've trained myself many years ago not to play into that feeling. I used to allow it to ruin my day. I would just assume, okay, well, the day is ruined. I'm going to, I would affirm to myself that now I'm not going to feel well all day, which does, and not in a hypochondriac way, just in a, I'm still going to do everything on the schedule, just not feeling physically great. And I had a very poor diet for many years, which certainly exacerbated this. So what I'm getting at is that I'm already, coming out of whatever that funk is. But then looking back on it, um, and somewhere around 8 hours, 7.5, 8 hours of deep quality sleep, and awakening a couple of times, but then able to go right back into that deep sleep, and probably less of the REM sleep. I think the truck driving seems to be more less deep sleep, physically restful sleep, and more REM sleep. So just my opinion. This is not medical advice. I'm guessing. I believe what happens during the restful, deep physical sleep is the body takes the opportunity to, do whatever healing, maybe of an organ or various tissues that maybe's been on the back burner, that the body would realize, okay, well, this bozo doesn't generally manage to drive a truck for too long in duration. Certainly no more than 6 to 9 months at the maximum. So it has put off presumably some of this healing. And I noticed on my 34-hour restarts a couple of times I sort of accidentally got a proper night's sleep, meaning proper based on what we are told by society, the 8 hours and all of this. And it would mess me up. I could tell it actually like screwed up my sleep cycles. My body would hurt. Um, And this, and to be clear, this is that good pain. This is the body's, and it's interesting how we interpret that as, oh, I'm sick, I don't feel well, my body aches. Um, and I look at it on a longer timeline. Probably when I look back coming out of these chronic illnesses of the last 4 years, the progression is upward over time. Now, it certainly flatlines, but the progression of, my health is improving over that period of time slowly. Uh, so this, I'm now realizing it's probably good overall, but not much fun in the short term, I have to say. And then, sort of waking up in a foul mood, I'm thinking about, well, what relation could that have to the organs, the kidneys in particular? Um, I'm simultaneously taxing my kidneys in a way. I've cranked up my calories lately with some cookies that claim to be made with proper ingredients. Could just be a cope though, right? It's like, oh, Benton talks about not eating junk food and processed food and fast food, and here he is. I've got a 100% cocoa dark chocolate bar, 1.7 ounce. Now that is inarguably a health food, high in nutrition, but then the cookies, not really high in nutrition. Some nutrition, mostly high in calories, which does wonders, can do wonders for the male with his hormone production. So I do know it to be good on occasion to crank up the calories. But then, in the past, after I lost weight, I would have, I might mention in passing to an overweight person that I need to watch out, or that I might want a particular food at a time, but I'm choosing not to have it. And they're like, well, what are you worried about? Meaning, well, I was thin and they were fat. You don't have to worry. And I was like, actually, it's quite the contrary. When I was overweight, I got to eat whatever I wanted without worrying or fearing getting fat. So, I will admit to some vanity when I pull my shirt up and look in the mirror, and I haven't had regular access to a mirror. I see that trim waistline, and I'm like, hey, man, maybe we want to hang on to this to some extent, without developing an eating disorder or a body dysmorphia, right? Yeah, we'd like to keep that hint of a spare tire and a love handle. That's more healthy. But I got veins in my ab, not in where my abs would be. I've never been able to have abs. Either way, let's not get too. What's up, Raz Van? Good to see you, sir. Let's not get too vanity. Let's not get too bent in his vein. What's up, man? MVP Razvan. Well, we're done with the truck driving, Razvan. I think we made it 8 full weeks, I believe. And today is the day when I will find out, are they going to pay me my last check? Technically speaking, if they wanted to be vindictive, there's an amount of time they could wait, and then they could pay the last check. But especially in Texas, the labor board or whoever it is doesn't play. So I mean, there's really no version of them just not paying me and remaining in business, and me not. They would open themselves up to such liability that for lawsuits. Um, but if they wanted to be shitty about it, they could delay payment for some time. In fact, that last company I worked for before this one, or worked with, ART Transportation, now that I recall, because of that cargo claim, they kept my last check. But I realize now that they sent me a settlement, like at the very end of the fiscal year, or near the end of December. So they actually held my last check as long, for the whole year, apparently. Um, whatever they legally thought they could get away with in Arkansas. And then they probably do that just, as a normal course of business. So there wasn't a human who said, well, actually, he's getting $0 because we're keeping his check. They still waited that long to process it, now that I think about it. Yeah, interesting. So yeah, sleep's a thing. And it's interesting being in this motel also, and realizing just how ill and depressed I was when I stayed here before. I've done at least two different, multi-month stints here. They still rent the room $700 a month with a $150 deposit. I've been paying by the night so far. just under $200 I paid for 4 nights. It's worth the money to maintain my flexibility, because some people would say, well, why not, do the 700 a month? Because I don't know. When I check in, when I got here, I don't know how long I'll be here. However, it does become a thing mathematically where it's like, hey, you know, even, and this is where the sunk cost fallacy comes into play, because some folks, let's say I paid $300, um, by the night, some folks would then want to leave because they'd say, well, if I pay for a month, I'm actually making it like $1,000. But it's just not how mathematics and economics works. I'm actually buying my flexibility in case I choose to not stay here for a time. And if I today will be a big deal. I should find out if they're going to pay me, although I won't know for sure until tomorrow. But generally, they send a settlement on Thursday, and they send an email that says they've scheduled a payment, a direct deposit. So that will help make the decision. And I got my new driver's license yesterday. Renewed the driver's license. That was quite a process. And I finally figured out why so many people were at the revenue office. It was jam packed at the revenue office. I waited, and I'm good at waiting, being a truck driver. I think I waited somewhere around an hour and a half, which is definitely unusual for Arkansas. Um, it's that real ID. Arkansas never required the real ID. I got my first CDL in Texas in 2018, and they forced it back then, meaning, there's no choice. However, it was not optional at the DMV. Now, I know some folks, free man on the land types will say, well, actually, they can't force it, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, practically speaking, for a man who was living in a homeless shelter, working at the airport, Goodwill paid for my CDL school. And, I had to go in order to get my learner's permit to learn how to drive a truck, I had to get a Texas license. And what that caused was the Salvation Army, the people that worked there had to have an affidavit notarized that I was a Texas resident. So that's what I mean, is practically speaking, there was no way to tell them, okay, I understand you folks are jumping through some hoops on my behalf, but I can't do this real ID. So, y'all are gonna have to wait while I free man on the land it. See, it's just not practical, right? So that added some time at the revenue office. So now we have the little star in the upper right hand corner of the ID for the real ID. And again, I had it with Texas. So I mean, what's the fucking difference? Um, I already took the mark, if that's what that means. And I don't like even talking that way. I actually didn't take the mark. Um, so if that's even a thing, right? Be careful with my speech here. But I think y'all know what I mean. So yeah, back to the kidneys, taking it as just waking up in a foul mood. And in fact, again, back to the spiritual attacks and the mockery of the realm. I woke up with Metallica's "One," that song in my head, and meditatively, I'm observing like what is going on here, and then I actually feel pretty good physically, but then recognizing that my body had been through some sort of deep rest. I have to assume it's this. Um, a lot of the substances I put in my body are quite good for the kidneys, as far as helping them heal, but then uh, more sugar than normal 3 days in a row with the cookies to get the extra 1,000 calories. Although yesterday it wasn't quite an extra 1,000 because I ate less of some other foods, but I'm going to step that down. I'll probably cycle that over time. Here and there, have a 2 to 3 days in a row of cookies to get the hormones going from cranking up the calories, and then just cycle right back off of it. And I'm pretty sure I'm cycling off the coffee. Mm. So, fear being associated with the kidneys, if anybody's unaware of that. And then if I look back to the fake pandemic time, and just how much people were under attack, a lot of that, in my experience, was a direct attack on the kidneys and other body parts, certainly the organs in general. But just the level of fear being pumped at the populace all the time, of course, perpetually pumped at the populace, the fear, and then, ratcheted up, and the fanning of those flames of fear during the fake pandemic, certainly. And then those who were unfortunate enough, like my mother, to end up in the ICU, given the remdesivir, which I myself have taken and damaged my kidneys with because I did a medical research study that paid me like $8,000. It's been so long I've forgotten the amount. I think it was like $8,200, and they gave me a cocktail of drugs. And looking back on it, it was absolutely, they were studying, the system was studying like probably what are going to be the best oral medications for maximum organ damage. I'm almost certain that that was the case. And but again, they tested in healthy people. That's how I qualified for the study. So it wasn't in people who are ill or people who have HIV or whatever, or hepatitis C. So I took remdesivir for like a month, as memory serves, or at least 2 weeks. So I would associate that. I wasn't feeling fearful though. I was doing my, meditation. I'm checking in, and for the average person who has not developed these techniques, but I would say, anybody that's gotten to my age or thereabouts, whether they call it spiritual practices or not. I mean, everybody has their own thing by now for dealing with life. So, what I would encourage people if they asked me was to tap into that even more, to really, especially upon awakening, because in my experience, that's one of the times that individually, perhaps the individual is most susceptible to spiritual attack at times. And, realizing that, well, I'm not ill, my body feels okay. Maybe some, coming out of this deep rest, deep rest, by the way, like Jim Carrey liked to point out, deep rest, you know, um, and then recognizing, why do I have Metallica's song One going in my head? And then saying, well, probably something to do with fear and these kidneys and spiritual attacks and all of this. It all made sense. And then knowing and trusting, this is the spiritual surrender, surrendering to the reality that, as long as I don't give fuel to the fire, that song will stop playing in my head at a certain point. Uh, Many folks, of course, the system, the realm, Moloch's machine teaches everybody, well, every desire, every action, everything accomplishable must be done only through the yang or the aggressive or the assertive, right? I call it AAD. I have this in the notes somewhere. I think, yeah, aggressive, assertive, dominant. It's not ADHD. It's like, look at this realm, more or less just teaches people to be something that I naturally was as a younger person, thus being ahead of the curve in some ways. It teaches people to be aggressive, assertive, and dominant. Again, man will dominate man unto his own injury. And that's absolutely some of the truth of the Bible, certainly, without question, in my view. Um, so I know in the moment, this, because I'm thinking to myself, I really don't want to hear the words to this song, but then reviewing the like the written content of the song without repeating it now, it's quite disturbing. And I would say it does represent a direct spiritual attack. And then recognizing, well, I was choosing to listen to music like this, back in my youth, and that was a popular song, and is to this day to some extent. And I see that as a mockery and as a getting the person listening to the song, if they identify with the song, if you look at the content of the lyrics, it is some affirmation of just directly choosing to exist in a hell of one's own making. And someone say, well, but in the song he went off to war, and he got blowed up or what. Well, but we're still talking like metaphorically. If I'm singing the song to myself in my head, I didn't go off to war and get blowed up. So that doesn't really, that level of dismissal doesn't really stand up. It's a person, you know on the one hand, a person might consider the idea of an affirmation, a fake it till you make it affirmations around abundance, or just, I could look some up and read them for you. Affirmations. They might consider that ridiculous and never participate. Now, I have my own history with positive affirmations, but then to repeat something like that to oneself in one's head, a song like that is a negative affirmation, certainly. And people can dismiss it. Oh, well, it's not it's not what you're saying it is, Benton. It's like, well, uh, I'm pretty sure it is. And, as we know, there's no version of entertainers getting, world famous and wealthy in this realm without serving Moloch's machine. So look at how many albums Metallica sold, and, the popularity of just that one song, that one video. It had quite the reach, as they call it now. It had reach before that was even a term. Oh, my car, if I haven't mentioned. BDB, by the way. Yeah, I mean, where does Bon Jovi? Boy, it was attacked by the hailstorm, man. It even, on the kind of the corner side of the car, it like broke the paint. It's one of the dings is so large it broke the paint. It put a perfect circle, almost a nearly a perfect circle through one of my the top of one of the side mirrors, the passenger side mirror. Everything's functional. It cracked both tail light lenses, one of them quite severely. So there may be some of that red tape in my future. Um, I don't believe I'll be replacing unless I can find it maybe at a junkyard. I don't believe I will be replacing the tail light lenses, or the housing, whatever that's called. But yeah, definitely, the body knows when it has an opportunity to rest, and I started powering, especially after the cookies, man. I started powering down yesterday, at about the normal time, but I've been sleeping later. So I'm trying to stay up closer to. I'm staying up closer to 6 and sleep until like 2:30. Without having to know that I'm going to be waking up and driving soon. Then none of that going on. Certainly less sharp than I would be if it was asleep, where my body knew I'd be truck driving. And no, I'm putting no pressure on myself to perform on this one. I do hope I'm not disturbing anybody in the motel. I'm out in my car. I'm facing, towards the road and away from the building. So it's probably about the best we can do in this situation. But yeah, on to the next adventure. Not knowing what that's going to be quite yet. It might be a month of, and some of this is selfish. I am, addiction is not the proper term, but I'm so in love with these egg drinks. It'd probably be worth the money to stay here for a month, and maybe that could be my goodbye to which I would still be able to have to some extent, but I wouldn't be saying goodbye to the egg drinks. It would the egg yolk drinks. It would be it would be, I have the money to enjoy another month of proper nutrition and rest, and then on to the next episode. What It's almost, let's see, it's May 15th, June 15th. Although I will say this, if I'm going to drive to the West Coast, soon would be the time, because it's going to get too hot in the desert. Mm. And trying to figure out what to do with oneself to not drive, during the heat of the day if possible. But, um, that's a whole thing, driving all the way across the desert in the summer, or not even in the summer. It's already hot to some extent, but I mean that actual desert heat. And some would say, well, what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is I'm not interested in finding out that my I should have, flushed the cooling system or whatever. You know, it's probably time to do it. I may not even be hanging on to this car in the long run. Um, it will absolutely make it across the desert right now, barring the unforeseen. So it's strategic, right? It's not. I'm not ever going to just be like, oh well, it's a car, it works. Let's drive it across the desert in the near the hottest part, or at least just when it's 100 degrees every day for the high, which is already not every day, but there's already spots where it's 100 degrees or close to it. So yeah, definitely. And then 40 is an option. I-40, which is it's still hot, but not it's not quite the same thing as going all the way across that desert. But then you get the high elevation becomes a factor also. You always heard Denver, the mile high city. Well, that's like 50 something, 5,000, maybe 5,200, 5,500 feet or whatever. Like Flagstaff, Arizona is like over seven, lest we forget. But it's a good problem to have. And then, I just don't know. I just don't think I'm down for any amount of time in California, either sleeping in my car or, and forget about the fuel prices. I mean, the fuel is, even when it's not expensive, it's still, you know, gasoline is expensive in America. California, Oregon, and Washington is more expensive, so is the Northeast to some extent. Um, that's just a given. And I understand the hysteria around the possibility of $8 gas and all of this. Well, I looked in LA. When I left LA, it was about 4.29, in the area in Echo Park, and now it's $5. Like that's not, yeah, it's more, but that's not really a big difference as far as it's still doable. So setting the hysteria aside, I'm just not sure I'm interested in, car insurance, gas, or, doing what I did last time, leaving it in one place, moving the car as little as possible and sleeping in it. And then it's just fucking disgusting in here. And, I have a high tolerance for disgusting, and it was just bad, dude. It was definitely one of the reasons I went back to truck driving and, left Los Angeles was like, I said, man, I got to move out of this car at some point just to clean it. It's not really doable in such a small car with all of one's belongings. And that's another thing, you know, all of this stuff I've been going on and on about around commerce and the nature of the realm and my, true knowledge of self. And something I've been fantasizing about on some level for many years is doing the homeless thing, but with a minimum of possessions. Mm. And then also, if I'm scraping up the money month to month for the car insurance, and if I, you know, have the tags renewed, which is very affordable in Arkansas, I'm working on it actually. I'm trying to get the tags renewed without driving physically to Baxter County, Arkansas, if possible. Although I may still. It's uh, it's not a fun drive. It's really not. And it's like to do it in one day. It's like I think it's about 7 hour drive to go there and back in one day. Um, or I could stay in a motel there and split it up. But yeah, I think if I went to the West Coast, I would probably attempt to figure out some kind of way to stash the car and then just not worry about it. So like go to LA and be on foot and then just try to find somewhere maybe on the outskirts of the bus route or whatever, and then just go back to it, when it's time to leave town, and it's either there or it's not, right? And that would mean, other than maybe a few, replaceable extra items, not leaving any valuables in the car. And that's, of course, in the homeless lifestyle, that's one of the major advantages is having somewhere to leave one's things. So then if we get into carrying my things everywhere all the time, I did enough years of that. I did 6 straight years of the gigantic hiking backpack and taking all my shit everywhere I went. I'm over it, I have to tell you. So I intentionally bought a backpack that's not that large, and I have my smaller backpack for my personal items. So, whatever fits in that bigger backpack at the level of blankets and clothes, which won't be much. And the clothes will mostly be like what like one change of clothes and then socks and underwear. And then, so we're talking about, traveling pretty light. Um, and I'd fantasized in the past about just, more or less the garment, maybe like a blanket and the beggar's bowl type shit, or just a bedroll. But I don't think we're quite there yet. A stove is a stove and some version of a pot, you know, whether it's just a tea kettle or whatever seems to be in order. And then now you're into stove fuel, you know, it's, well, I might as well, you know, have, um, and really it's going to be the egg stuff. I have just an entire tote, uh, dedicated to the egg, the stuff to make the egg drinks, egg yolk drinks. Yeah, I made a little bit of bank, Razvan. I'm looking at the comments. He said you made the bank. I made a little bit, but yeah, with my ability to live so cheap, it will at least give me the opportunity to figure out generally where I want to physically go in the States, probably the West Coast, most likely, and then, you know, have enough of a cushion to sort of figure it out from there. And it is an adventure, and it is, you know, it's enjoyable. Yeah, a lot of people, that uncertainty, you know, I've trained myself to be able to cope with that uncertainty, so it actually makes it, you know, kind of enjoyable in a way. You know, an actual adventure, not knowing what's on the horizon. Exactly. Anyway, so yeah, thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Um, and as I noted, the truck driving is that's the easy part, and the, you know, 22 and a half hours at the shipper to get loaded, like that's the easy part. It's all of the psychological games and being treated like a child, and you know, this is the transition to self-driving, and but nobody will talk about it, and everybody's putting their head in the sand for the most part. You know, I'm watching, and I mentioned this yesterday on the stream. I watched a trusted channel in trucking. From my perspective, I think it's called like ET Transportation or something like that, out of Canada. And I like the guy that does the channel. You can tell he really knows a lot about truck driving, the industry. You know, he's one of these guys who's interested in following the trends. And they did a video recently about, is trucking sustainable in 2025, and he's talking about from the perspective of the driver, and it's not. And he's also talking about from the perspective of the company, it's simply not sustainable. And he's going through all the numbers of, you know, this is what the fuel costs, this is what the driver costs, and all of these things. And what he's leaving unsaid is that with the rates where they are and unlikely to really ever go up from here, he's not saying it directly, but it is sustainable if the driver doesn't have to be paid. So I take this to mean that the markets have already adapted. And this may be part of the reason, Razvan, why over in Europe, y'all get the better trucks and everything, and the just better design is, you know, if America, if it was planned and looked to that, well, in America, they're going to switch over to mostly self-driving for the long haul portion. You know, I don't know that Europe is, you know, I'm assuming it's possible to some extent in Europe, and maybe it's already happening, but you know, America, the way the roads are designed and all of this, it seems like it would be more doable, at least initially here, if that makes sense. So that's how I'm looking at the self-driving, and many folks will immediately say, "Oh, well, that's never going to happen." Well, it's happening. I mean, it's officially happening. Uh, you know, if I had freight that needed to be moved, I could go to Uber Freight, which is an app, and someone will take my load, and it could be a company called Hirschbach, uh, on a self-driving truck with no human. Like that's so it's already happening between Houston and Dallas. That's official. So this idea that, well, that's never going to happen. What's happening? I don't know what to tell you. Like the level of delusion and denial, you know, on behalf of the general public is, and that most people just the assumption is, oh well, that would be scary, so people aren't going to put up with it. And I just say, well, should I start naming a bazillion scary things that people put up with? I mean, I don't know. Like driving itself's pretty fucking scary if you think about it. You know, based on how dangerous it is. So the idea that you know, everybody driving has chosen to do a thing that's dangerous, but they've also chosen not to view it as dangerous. Are they really going to rise up and say, hey, we don't want to be doing this dangerous thing with trucks that don't have a driver? Like it's just that makes no logical sense. It's just not logical that that would happen. But that's you know, that's the feeling. That's the sentiment is, oh, well, you know, that's never going to happen because of this, that, and the third. And I say, well, what about all these other things that people assumed would never happen that have happened? Like, what about, you know, this and that? And I could just start naming things and, you know, imagine the blank looks I would receive. Oh, it's like, yeah, man, it's all happening. It's a hell realm, functionally. Does it really matter? The various aspects. It's manifesting in the moment as a hell realm. I mean, what else? What else do I need to know? Not much. Yeah, this coffee addiction is a thing, certainly. My body's screaming out, calling out for more coffee. There's a little bit left in the room, but I don't know if I'm going for it or not. I don't think I am. It's almost dark chocolate time, though. Yeah, there's something about that deep rest where my body's like, "Hey, man, you don't have nothing to do. Like, I can't really do anything until normal business hours starts. In like 4 hours, and even then, if I start trying to call around and get shit done, it's the people, they're there to do a job, but it's some version of, hey, man, like I just got here, like let me get my bearings right. And I'm sensitive to that. I don't want to just pounce on people right when they start their day, but my thing is like, yeah, bro, I slept in to 2:30. It slept in past my normal time, so now I'm waiting 6 fucking hours, and it's like, and then I'm still being treated like, uh, hey, it's still early in the morning, and I guess it's my own sleep schedule or just my own, you know, productivity within myself, but it just seems lazy to me. This idea of people sleeping till as late as possible and then dragging their carcass to work, and the attitude is something of we're not really ready for this. But then part of it is the assessor's office. Those ladies in there are, probably hopped up on Adderall or whatever. They're go getters, and I know from experience, there's like 5 to 10 people will file in right when they open the doors. But probably I could wait till 9 a.m. and give them a call, and they'll probably tell me exactly what to do. And lickety split. And I went ahead and paid it online. It was only like $67, I think, for the property tax. I got to, paying the state of for the privilege of my personal property, right? So that what I can have the privilege of registering, and the vehicle is registered, but so that I can have the privilege of continuing to register my automobile because of why? Because um, databases, so that the jackbooted oppressor thugs leave me alone, and I'm allowed to. It's really, if you think about it, it is a racketeering. It's the state of saying, it's like, yeah, we will allow you. We're the mob. The state of saying we're the mob. We're running a racket here. RICO style. And as long as Benton here jumps through the hoops and pays the money along the way, and keeps the placards on the car, right? Or in my case, the license plate. There's only one rear plate in Arkansas, and keeps the little piece of paper that says the car's registered, right? And now I have a driver's license, a CDL for 5 more years. I certainly thought about it. It was a tough choice. I thought about just, I'm doing live streams about the nature of commerce and being death and all of this. And it's like, really, you're going to continue to hold a CDL? But it's just too, unfortunately, living in a material realm on some level, and it's too easy to be able to say, well, they'll, you know, as conditions get worse in truck driving, I could still probably do another month or two somewhere, you know, and just grab a bunch of money, which is not even a bunch of money, but if they pay me today, um, or tomorrow, by the time I get, done whatever little business I'm getting done, I'll have like, and not even counting just my normal, like day to day food, like food for the week or whatever, even a couple of nights in the motel, that's like little over 6 G's. Um, so, it's not a lot of money, uh, the air quotes in this economy, but it's for somebody who is able to sleep in a car and, maybe pitch a tent. And I do have a tent in the car. Uh, food is really the main expense for me, eating real actual food. and it's a major expense for anybody, of course. It's like, oh, get the stretch in for the day. And then not to pick on Razvan, but he's used to it. He knows me by now. Talking about, enjoy it. And I know what you mean, but then just the notion of sort of relaxing, into the calm of a job well done. Yeah, there's something to that, but then, and again, not to pick on Razvan, that's not the intention, but then, the notion of that really is what the realm sets us up for, is this idea of, you know, sort of earning the right to be, what I should be that way anyway. That's how I look at it. And, I myself think this way to some extent. It's identifying, and let's leave Razvan out of it, just that idea of, having earned one's ability to enjoy. And then, that is probably hardwired into us to some extent, um, arguably, but this dystopian features of 2025 is, it's the transactional society, and it's the just everything, almost everything that occurs is in the context of business, and certainly Moloch's machine. So it's sort of this notion of, the system tells me, like, when I've done enough serving of Moloch's machine, it's like, now you get to take a little break. And now, or the fact is, part of you know, uh, the humility or the humiliation of living in the streets with nothing for all that time is, like, I absolutely know how to go to specific locations and just more or less hang out, right? And and my own nature, back to this, to the true knowledge of self, like, peace is my nature, like that. I am peace, right? I am rest. I am calm. Like, this is actually, it's back to the inversion of the realm. So, not, again, this is nothing Razvan did, and I understand, I myself think the way he thinks here, also. But it's this idea that's exactly backwards. It's like, what left to my own devices, it's Psalm 23, made to lie down in green pastures. you know Even in 2025, although Razvan would probably counter and say, yeah, you can go do that, sir, but that's only going to last until, how many days of hunger, right? It's like, okay, at a certain point, how is one getting food and water? Yeah, I understand, Benton, you may be able to know where the weather's nice enough to go lie in a green pasture, and I mean literally lie in a green pasture somewhere. But then, you know the the, what's the word for this, the things that must be taken care of on a daily basis will fairly quickly, show themselves. So, you're right, sir. You're right on that. I agree. It's not, that it is it's some version of a fantasy, but then, I could counter with, the Bible and the birds of the air neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns. They're taken care of. Aren't you of much greater value? So I don't know, man. It's an interesting problem to think one's way through. I haven't been drinking enough water, so I think I'm going to make sure and drink the rest of this water before I have the chocolate. But thank you, sir. I will enjoy the. And I don't know that there's ever going to be any time back on. That's the thing, Razvan said. Enjoy your time off. You know, and I have been, and I know what he means, because he's driven a truck. So this is the first break I've had in 2 months. I just worked the whole 2 months. So this is only what, Monday doesn't even count, because technically I work Monday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, this is the third day. This is the start of the third day. And this is what truck driving does to a fella, right? I already, just from having 2 full complete days off, I already feel like, um, that the rest break, but really it's just starting. Um, and that's some of what I felt physically when I woke up this morning is, um, I remember the first time I stayed out for a long time as a truck driver was my rookie year with Snyder. I stayed out 14 weeks, but I was still doing restarts, um, because I didn't really know how to run on recaps yet. And hang on, Okay, that's a car driving by. Thought it was somebody on a bike. But what I recognize is I took like a whole week off, and I didn't even really start to feel tired until like 3 to 4 days in. So this is a version of that, to a lesser extent, certainly, where it actually sort of takes the body a little while to figure out, oh, he's actually going to let us rest up properly and not just, rush us right back to work. So, I probably should be in the room laying down right now. I don't like messing up my sleep schedule. I know if I fall back asleep, it's going to start messing up my sleep schedule. Oh, I know you're not, Razvan. I'm being I know you're being positive. I appreciate it. It's my own just it's the same thinking and spirit that's gotten me to this recent breakthrough. So I'm unwilling to entirely let it go, but I know you didn't mean anything by it, and I have my own versions of positivity certainly towards people. So I took it as that. It's just for the purposes of the discussion, I felt the need to sort of reframe it in the context of the hell realm, because it is fucked up, you know, that people, and this is kind of ties in with one of my favorite channels, Millennial Steam, and it is fucked up that people are slaving away and burning the candle at both ends, and not really able to pay their bills fully, and it's a shame, and that they're not able to. It is a luxury in some way that I've developed these abilities to just, I know I can just go kick it for a month or two and be able to eat, and know how to camp out, and even psychologically being able to sleep outdoors is a big deal. And still to get, a minimum level of rest, and then rest in the daytime probably, uh to make up for whatever, lack of sleep happens trying to sleep, in an urban area outdoors. So some version of a nap or laying down during the daytime. But for the normal, just your average normie, that's just, they're in fact the terror of possibly experiencing homelessness. And the fact is, it's highly likely that um, homelessness is already very high in the U.S. And unless things shake out differently than I expect they're going to shake out, you're going to have and you're going to have new homeless people no matter what. But I mean, it's going to be like a lot of new homeless people, and that psychologically adjusting to homelessness is a big fucking deal. And what I used to tell people after I was fully immersed and adapted to it, and I did recognize that it changed who I am on some level. Although what I am can't, be changed, of course. But the part of me that would be identified with the delusion of the realm itself, whatever that psychology and coding is, certainly got updated, and can't can't really be undone. And I would tell people, when you could just tell when they're new to being homeless, and I would say, listen, and then I might start talking to them, and they were all freaked out, and wanting to, almost like somebody, who's going through the front end of PTSD, right? They're trying to talk about it and just deal with it. And I'm just like, look, man, do not adapt to this lifestyle. Like, whatever you got to do, just get the fuck. And I rarely give people advice, especially if they haven't asked for it. Now, to some extent, they were seeking my advice. Um, you know, they could see that I was taking it all in stride. I knew what was up. I knew where to go to at what time of the month to get, a bus pass or whatever. This was in Austin, I'm thinking of specifically. And, that becomes a skill all its own, sort of, being able to maneuver all of those systems. And it's certainly a thing. And that's what I told him. I said, man, whatever you got to do to get out of this, because I said, once you adapt to this, you're going to be a different person, man. It's just not this ain't the life, unless, in my case, I chose it willingly for my own purposes. And in part, that's a big part of what's led us to this point of these live streams. Again, the recent breakthrough, the true knowledge of self / self realization. All the spiritual topics discussed over here, like that. that was born out of, choosing to take it to the streets for so long. And part of me enjoys it. I've never shied away from that, part of me likes being homeless. And even, I mean, like, drop me in some city with just, the clothes on my back and, just a minority, whatever minority of items I might show up with. And it's like, yeah, I know what to do. I know how to navigate my way through all of that. And part of me likes it. But then, and like having my free time and certainly a lot of study. I spent a lot of that time in the library, doing, formal study, filling notebook after notebook after notebook. People may think I'm exaggerating, but I get these cheap notebooks from Walmart that have the spiral, or Dollar General that have the spiral at the top because I'm left-handed. So it's not a full like 8.5 by 11 page, but it's like a rectangle. It's taller than it is wide, but not the tiny little bitty pad. It's more of a in between the tiny pad and the 8.5 by 11. And just from what I studied on the financial system during the bailouts, by the time I made it to San Francisco, and I finally, through lack of sleep, became a little paranoid and said, well, I don't know if the cops, if I want to be found by the cops with, like, if they start looking through these notebooks, it may not look good for me. And that was just about the financial system, true stuff about the financial system. And that was at least 30 of those notebooks, probably more actually, because I remember, two significant stacks and how tall they were, and just, throwing them into a trash can in San Francisco somewhere back in the day. I mean, it was at least 30 notebooks, probably more, honestly. And that was just from my studies of the financial system, on the heels of the 0809 crisis. And I've done versions of that with like many, many different topics. I got two notebooks right now, and one of them's already half full. It's not to brag, it's to say, look, man, yeah, I fuck off and do things, but I'm always making, and I feel no, I'm not identified with that part where I need to prove my production to society anymore. But, no matter what, I'm productive. So what I am is incapable of being the idea of not being productive. It's like, yeah, what I am doesn't know how to not be productive. What I am doesn't know what you're talking about. Right. Somebody that would suggest I need to, but again, commerce. I need to go out here and serve antithesis and death by being productive to make a business successful. And I say no. That's exactly backwards. That's exactly what I was not sent to this place to do. Or even if let's say I agreed to come here because I am one with the force that actually created this realm via delusion, right? And this realm absolutely, by definition, exists as a delusion. And I think that bears repeating, probably on every live stream. So let me go ahead and look up the meaning of the word delusion. And if and this is not a challenge or everybody's welcome who would listen to me, but I would say to anybody who, let's make it sound, if anybody resists what I'm about to say, I would question, okay, but why is the person resisting it? What's in it for the person? Because this seems, I know this to be the truth, but so this word will tell you what this realm is by definition. So, and it's got four different definitions. It's a noun, but one of them is just straight up describing the realm. But let's see. Number one is a false belief that is resistant to confrontation with actual facts. So I would say that it's the false belief that this is real, right? That the realm is entirely real. But then we have a word for deja vu. We have the word surreal exists, right? There's an actual word, unreality. And, anybody who is what I am, what I know myself to be, I don't, and again, I'll never know for sure, but my suspicion is that anybody who is what I am, whether they know it or not, there's no version of them not experiencing deja vu, surrealism, and unreality. And I experience, not the deja vu so much, but I experience surrealism and unreality on a daily basis. And we'll probably define those next. And I have some notes on these topics. We'll probably read through the notes. So that's just one of four definitions. So I would say the false belief, and again, if the listener, instead of the default for the human based on the psychology given to each individual via Moloch's machine by design, is to negate, the default is to resist a new idea. So to seek to disconfirm. So what Razvan is saying is, hey man, I'm just being positive towards you. It's like, yeah, absolutely. I do that too. What I would say, and not to Razvan, but to people in general, is why is it okay to be negative towards ideas, especially new ideas? So why are people practicing? And again, leaving Razvan out of it is, I don't want this to be misconstrued. I don't mean him. I mean broadly, society, as we know, and I've talked about toxic positivity and all of these things over time. Bringing it to the level of why isn't that the approach to new ideas? I'm just, all I'm saying is, hey, let's look at this in a new way. And so my thing is, the false belief is the idea that this realm is exactly what it purports to be, right? This idea of you only live once, the whole Christian notion of, a lot of it being tied to the Gospel of Paul, and this idea that the person must live in a specific way, and a lot of that has to do with serving business. And what I now know is that's all false belief, right? And so here's the key point with respect to the general public: the belief is resistant to confrontation with actual facts. So with me operating from the true knowledge of self within myself, if I'm then willing on some level, maybe just in a thought experiment, to say, well, maybe some of these other beings are what I am, right? I see the resistance in them because I know for a fact what this realm is now, because I know that it only exists in relation to what I am, my nature. This is antithesis of my own nature, created by the force that I'm one with via delusion, right? The creative force subverted into delusion, because remember back to the Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk, what I am is unable to conceptualize the calamities that could occur if a delusion was created in which delusively something impossible were to happen. Impossible is nothing. The breaking off, the idea that it's possible to break off little chunks of an indivisible force, right? Uh, and then that force, those individuated little pieces, can then go into a delusion and in fact live a life based on delusion, because it's based on it's based on the notion that it's even possible for an indivisible force to come into a place like this, a place of delusion, and experience via delusion. It's like, yeah, it is possible. Oh, but only through the subversion of my own creative force that never lies dormant and always brings something new into existence. So this is what I mean by, so the resistance to confrontation with actual facts is every moment, even I, who understand this so well logically, and logically I understand it well enough to explain it, even I, some part of the day, I'm resistant to reality, because I, at some point in the day, so far, I end up temporarily resorting to identifying with the realness of the realm as if it's wholly real, but it's not. And I think any of us could recognize just, and when I get around to the definitions of some of these other terms, I will rest my case and say, look, people feel free to reject all of this, but I don't see how a person could reject it and maintain their intellectual integrity, if they even have such. So the second definition is the state of being deluded or misled, or process of deluding somebody. And that is the psychology of this realm, the psychology being designed by Moloch's machine. That's baked into the cake. That's delusion, the state of being deluded or misled. How often does the so-called truth community talk about, well, we're lied to from day one, the public indoctrination. In the truth community, we call it the school's public indoctrination center. That is a delusion. That's by definition the state of being deluded or misled. So you might as well call them delusion centers, right? And right here it says it is, and now the example for that definition is in italics, is it is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, however satisfying and reassuring. It's right here in the dictionary. This is Wiktionary.org. This is an app that uses Wiktionary.org. It's right here in the definition. It is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion. And now this is how the realm operates to serve Moloch's machine of business and death is however satisfying and reassuring. Now, many will say, what do you mean it's a hell realm? It's not satisfying and reassuring. Well, it's a stand-in for satisfying and reassuring when one can conform to their peer groups and be accepted by their tribe or their society or their workplace. So you may say, well, logically, it's not satisfying and reassuring. And I'm here to tell you, emotionally, it is. If one is willing to be honest with oneself, and don't take my word for it. Do your own research, even if your own research is body scans, meditation. Actually, especially if that's your own research, research yourself, research your sphere of influence, right? Research your own internal space. It's the only way to know what the fuck is going on in there. All right, let me chill out. I'm getting cranky, old man. I changed up the coffee routine. That's probably what most of this is. And since I'm insisting on proper hydration today, I'm delaying the caffeine and the theobromine of the chocolate, but mostly the theobromine. And, all these supplements and health foods I take, the fact is there's a limit to the healing effect of that. So let me give you an analogy from weightlifting. And I did, if you look at the amount of mass I put on in the period of time, 4 years, it's a significant amount of muscle mass. I listen to some of these channels like this Greg Doucette, and he's an expert in a lot of this stuff, regardless of how he comes across. And natural bodybuilder, right? And I was natural too, but I wasn't a bodybuilder. But if you look at the amount of mass I put on, you know, it's a fairly impressive accomplishment. And of course, what have we seen? It's virtually all gone now, of course. Uh, but what I recognized is that the mindset of a person who trains that hard is they become too they like that feeling. The fact is, the person who's training that hard has to make themselves take breaks because the intensity of the exercise necessitates the body needs to rest. And actually, in some ways, the growth and the strength increases actually happen during the rest phases. It's to tear it down and then the body builds it back up. And it's the same thing here. There's going to be a limit to what my body is able to accomplish through taking in so much nutrition every day. So at some certain point, I've been putting it off. I've been knowing for at least a year and a half that there's going to be, and yes, I did technically fast for long periods of time because of calorie restriction, but I mean, I'm talking about an actual, I'll probably keep the digestion going, so not actual real fasting, more of an intermittent fasting, but probably a bunch of 3 day, like 72, however long I think I can get away with without eating but then being able to go back to normal eating immediately. My experience of fasting is it's great and wonderful. It's that transition back to food is very difficult. I did 17 days on the master cleanse. Hell, I did 12 days when I was getting off the booze. It's rough going back to eating after that. That's a sickness all its own. So I want to avoid that part, but you know, except for just a couple of minor things, I'm looking at a period of going without most of this stuff, which is going to be beneficial. It's just when we get to the preference of the individual, I want to keep taking all the things I like to take. Well, that's a preference, sir. Right. That has nothing to do with the birds of the air. Yeah, quote the birds of the air all you want. They don't do this and they're taken care of. Yeah, and they also don't get to live based on a bunch of preferences either. In a modern, still affluent society where if a person is able to get the money, there's all sorts of wonderful products that are available. Like that's still a thing, right? So the third definition of the word delusion is delusion, by the way, not dilution. that which is falsely or delusively believed or propagated. See, propagated is a key term here. False belief, error in belief. So just looking at the term error in belief, by definition, when you came out of your parents, they offered you up to Moloch, and that's my opinion, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. They offered you up to a pagan deity of commerce, industry, business, death, destruction, and all of these things, depravity, decadence, right? Modern society. And then error in belief would be to have a belief system installed based on what serves Moloch's machine, right? And then to live one's life without examining those beliefs, and to furthermore identify with the beliefs at the level of you, how you were socialized, your local community, your culture, right? This idea of make America great again, identifying with the military might of America, mom and apple pie and all these things, American dream, American exceptionalism. That's all error in belief, folks. Now, the person has the ability to double down on the false belief. It doesn't make it any less false, right? And I know those to be false beliefs, right? The only way out is through. I'm not the convincer. You're the convincer. The listener, only the listener can convince themselves. I can't, I can be persuasive to some extent. I lack the ability to convince another person. That's simply not possible. So, a person is free to continue to remain in their delusion, but however, by definition, entering into this realm and then experiencing a belief system that's given to the being, right, artificially, that is to, by dictionary definition, exist within a delusion. By the definition of the word, error in belief. So what I would say is, yeah, the belief system. So let's read that one again, because propagated is a key point. That which is falsely or delusively believed or propagated. And we're probably going to have to look up propagated, false belief, error in belief. So let's look up propagated. And this is going to tie into the creative force that never lies dormant. Right. I'm just going to have to type it in. It's not going to let me. It's not going to let me cut and paste here on the phone. Propagated. Can't even spell. Propagated, verb. And then we have adjective, propagate, but that's obsolete. So verb, to cause to continue or multiply by generation or successive production. That is the creative force that never lies dormant. So when they say dilute, part of the definition of the word delusion is the propagation of false belief. Okay, where and how? Inside of you, inside of your sphere of influence, via the subversion of your own creative force that never lies dormant and always brings something new into existence. And whatever's you're birthing into the now, which is the only thing that we know exists, and I'm telling you it exists in a delusion. So that's a lot. That's a lot of ideas stacked on top of each other. And I'm here to tell you, based on the definition of the words, the person, the individual, is actually continuing to propagate the delusion that they live in. Right. And this is the idea of ascending layers of false reality. Right. That's what this is. And see, I came to a lot of these understandings literally now years ago, before I had the ability to break all of this down and explain it to you folks and explain it to myself. So it's been years of me every day sitting with these ideas to some extent to finally, again, spiritual surrender, to surrender and get out of my own way and overcome myself enough to allow the epiphanies to occur over time, right? Yeah, the infestation continues. So yeah, probably once I get some of this other business taken care of, I think it's another vacuuming out of the car is going to be necessary. We just killed a pest, and I don't like doing that with my hand, but that's really the only way to accomplish it in the moment. Not a fan, but whatever. So that's the propagation, right? And it also, and I'll try to get through this a little quicker. To cause, to spread, to extend, to impel. That's an interesting term. Impel, or continue forward in space. So not expel, impel. Impel that would imply into yourself from this in the way I'm speaking, right? It also means to spread from person to person. Aha. See, now we get into what? Externalization versus internalization. And how the realm itself, Moloch's machine, via our psychologies, it so adeptly switches between external and internal, as far as how the person approaches their thinking. Is it directed outwardly into the environment and the realm, or is it directed internally? And so often what we see is people, and I noticed this in myself very early on. I said, "Oh, I'm actually internalizing a bunch of nonsense that don't really apply to me," and simultaneously, I'm directing my own efforts externally when I need to be putting them internally to grow and change and evolve and move forward. A lot of which was to unlearn the process of creating my own limitation and blockages. And ultimately, that's what I'm talking about when it comes to delusion. Is is the being is actively creating their own limitations. So it's the idea that it's possible to break off a chunk of an indivisible force that is unable to experience limitation except within delusion. Now I'm here and you're here seemingly in a larger delusion, and then we're day to day, moment to moment, creating our own delusion. And I'm even doing this to some extent. I know I'm not in full fucking reality. I can't be in full reality, or I wouldn't be seated in a car doing a live stream. Like, this is already by fucking definition, it's a delusion, right? And there's nothing I can do about that. Hypothetically, if enough of the other being, if in fact there's other beings here, again, solipsism, if forced to choose, but if in fact there's other beings here, and if enough of the beings simultaneously identified with their own true nature and failed to identify strongly with the delusion, I'm convinced the realm would just disappear and it would be heaven. Whatever's left would be heaven. So again, the realm has everything backwards. This idea of it's this idea of heaven must be created, or it's this idea that humans could turn this into some version of heaven through yang energy, through aggressive, assertive, dominant AAD. Absolutely not. That's not possible. It's that to allow what's here now to stop being created, whatever's left would most likely represent heaven. Do you see the backwardsness? But look at how sublime and subtle and nuanced it is. And this is why I say there's no such thing as common sense. Good luck common sensing your way to what I just, it's fleeting even to me, right? What I just broke down. And if folks don't listen to this and understand that I'm some fucking high level of a self-realized master in this realm, I don't know what to tell you. I am that one. I am the bodhisattva of the fucking delta on some level, right? That's just what I am. That's what I'm manifesting and expressing in this moment. I'm not identifying with that. In fact, I'm finding it necessary to remind myself of that fact, right? That's the humility that's built into whatever that is, right? So you're welcome. That I'm granting you the opportunity to listen to someone like me, because you're not going to find somebody. There's no other version of Benton that I can see. Anything I see that's a version of, well, that's not exactly true. I can think of one, and y'all won't like it. It's King Stephen, right? I've been listening to some of what he's putting down lately, and it's actually, I shouldn't say there's nobody. There's King Stephen, and yeah, I understand there's a certain manner of expression, there's a certain arrogance, there's a certain personality and all of these things. But I'm only talking about the ideas he talks about, and he's right on the fucking money. So I would say, with a few limited exceptions, who else is operating on these levels, right? And again, it's not a difficult bar to cross, right? And I don't say any of this to make anybody feel bad. I'm almost certain anybody could do it, but can you, and here's where the challenge comes in, can you just do a thing for 15 years more or less every day with no guarantee that it will even work out the way you might want it to work out? Again, spiritual surrender, in order to maybe have spiritual victory with no guarantee. Via what? Trust. Well, guess what I am is only able to trust. So of course that's one of my greatest powers, is okay, well, I'll just do my thing for 15 years and trust that it will work out as it's supposed to, which is exactly what's happened, right? Again, sublime, right? Sublimely. uh, it's not possible, in my experience, for the being to reach those levels of sublime, right, without the unlearning and the getting out of one's own way and the spiritual surrender. Meanwhile, I'm in the super center yesterday. I see a guy with an American flag military style shirt, and it's like, no retreat, no surrender. And I said out loud, no spiritual surrender means no spiritual victory, right? And I didn't say it as a challenge to him. I just sort of said it, kind of in a neutral tone, just sort of to the environment. But also, I'm pretty sure he heard me. Now, whether or not he knew what shirt he was wearing, I mean, who knows? But um, it's look at the realm. Just it's coming to remind me. Oh yeah, buddy, you're in this realm of delusion where you know, no retreat, no surrender. And then I'm thinking, well, I've read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, though. I'm pretty sure there's like a whole section on strategic fucking retreat and all this. Like, what are we even talking about? Like, so again, Moloch's machine gets a lot of mileage out of programming Americans to identify with the strength of the military and the strength of the country and say, look, no matter what, an American keeps pushing forward. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Supposedly one of the greatest tacticians ever, supposedly, I mean, official fiction, was like, hey, when necessary, y'all need to beat a retreat. So propagate, to originate and spread, to carry from place to place, to disseminate. Also, oh, that's obsolete. Never mind. To generate, to produce. Right. So let's go back to, and I think there was another word I wanted to talk about, but I've already forgotten what it was. Oh, sublime, real quick. That bears repeating. And again, there's no version of common sensing. I'm in the fucking dictionary like that. That's pretty much the opposite of common sense, right? It's like, yeah, I can use all of these words. I can't even define half of them in the moment. I could guess, but sublime is to raise to a state of especially moral or spiritual excellence, to exalt. So when I say, my path is progress, that's what I've been doing for 15 plus years. I've been figuring out how. So if that's the goal, to raise myself to a state of moral and spiritual and physical excellence, to exalt, right? Well, so now I can answer more of the how. Initially, I had really didn't know. So what did I do? I went into myself, into my sphere of influence. I tapped into what I am, which is trust itself. And I trusted, okay, ask and ye shall receive, set the intention, and then just go and let it come, right? And do whatever I'm able to do through the aggressive, assertive, dominant when necessary, right? I've done that. This is to the victor go the spoils. This is the spiritual victory. Part of me being able to speak on these concepts is the spoils, and I'm sharing them with whoever will listen. I'm sharing the spoils of my spiritual victory. Again, solipsism. Your spiritual victory or defeat that's on you. Spiritual victory, that's me. See how this goes? Because what I am is unable to know spiritual defeat. What I am, it exemplifies spiritual victory. That's what I am. Not a fake it till you make it. It's a true knowledge of self. So let's go over to exalt means to honor, to hold in high esteem, to praise or worship, right? So what does the realm do? The realm says, well, yeah, little human, you have a part of you, you have a hope station, and then you have a part of you that desires to worship. So what does the realm do? The realm does, okay, the worship is supposed to be internal. It says, okay, worship externally, where what I have no power externally. So give it up to what is purported to be a much greater force. Just give that exaltation, give it up to that larger force. That's backwards. Now it's not to worship my own delusory personality within Moloch's machine. That would be a mistake. It's to go into my sphere of influence once true knowledge of self is achieved, to surrender to exactly what that is based on its nature, and then to exalt that by what? By bringing it forth into the realm. And exalt means to praise or worship. Worship how? Where? What? Worship of my own nature, my cup runneth over style, by bathing in the continuous renewing of my spirit. Uh, and if what I am is one with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, and we can call that God because the Bible says God is love, and the Bible says the kingdom of love is within me, what else do I need to know? But then this realm will say, Moloch's machine will say, you're never allowed to worship anything inside of you, because what's inside of you could never be praiseworthy. Whatever's in you could never be exalted. See, spiritually attacked from day one in this realm, from day motherfucking one, because what I am is that spiritual perfection. That's what I am. And when I was a baby, that was the powerful symbol when my parents served me up to Moloch's machine of business, industry, corporations, work, education, work, service, production, right? It's backwards. Okay. And Moloch demands that. Moloch feeds off of that sacrifice because Moloch is the machine whereby the antithesis is in the process of usurping what? The authority of the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit. It's an attempt to subvert that force into um, into putting itself strategically in a position to be usurped. See, it's a checkmating of one's own self via one's own nature. And what I'm describing, part of that is the refusal to internalize into the sphere of influence and to, wow, there's something in there praiseworthy. There's something in there worthy of being worshiped. Well, when I identify with this realm will tell me that's not possible. This realm says, in fact, that's blasphemy and heresy. I say, well, strike me down then. Oh, you're gonna mock and shout. That's not a mockery. I'm putting my name on it. Strike me down then. I'm putting because I know what I am, not through a fake it till you make it, not because somebody told me, because I did what I had to do to discover it for myself within myself. Okay. And of course, the moment I recognize that it is good and proper outside of a delusion, by the way, when we read the definitions of delusion, the realm says, well, stay in delusion and false belief. See, by what? Continuing to subvert the creative force. Hold on, we got a walker. We got to see if he's going to try to approach us. He might. Just a moment. There's nothing happening out here, so some of the homeless wanderers will just go towards any stimulus, always. So I might have to jump out and talk to him. He can't really see me, but he probably heard me, my loud ass voice when he walked up, because he hasn't crossed in front of you. There he goes. Black man in a white wife beater, shorts, and white shoes and socks. Maybe dreads. Hard to tell. Yeah, probably a lovely person. It is Fort Smith though, so got to maintain security here. Bit of a sitting duck in a vehicle. So yeah, exalt. So let's go back. How did we get to exalt? See, now we need it also means to raise in rank, status, to elevate, right? And when we read all of this new agey, all of this, it's all about doing that, but doing it outside of oneself, right? It's all about, yeah, exalting and growing and changing, but well, and let me be clear, not outside of oneself, in relation to the realm itself, right? Which is, I've been in those hippy dippy circles on the West Coast. It's everybody's a little business. They've made themselves into a business, whatever it is that they do, and they all have the same spiritual way of talking, right? And going to yoga and going to certain types of musical perform. And I've done all of this on some level, not really the yoga so much, because I take yoga to mean meditation, not poses, right? But I've done my own versions of all of this stuff. Some of it, not a lot of it in groups, but at least near to the groups to some extent. And I've familiarity with all of this, right? So the system itself provides a means for, when the person wants to raise up and ascend within themselves, it has ways of directing that to where it's going to serve demonic entities, wicked spirits, unclean spirits. And this is where we've gotten to the idea of like the Kundalini and all of these practices, all of that new agey stuff. It's all fucking demonic. And I myself experienced it, and that's the conclusion I came to, right? I don't need to be, I don't need anybody to tell me that. Been there, done that, So let's go back to, how did we get to exalt? We got there from sublime, which is to raise someone, or an intangible thing to a state of especially moral or spiritual excellence to exalt. I mean, again, that's what I've been, 15 plus years ago began that process. And then, so how in the world am I going to do that and discover something worthy of worship because it's been exalted, right? To honor, to hold in high esteem, to praise or worship. And this realm will say, look, you can do just about anything you want, people. You know, if you can stay out of the penitentiary, and then it's America, so if you can do the crime, you can do the time. If you can do the time, you can do the crime. But the one thing you can't ever do is find if you find something uh, exalted within yourself that's worthy of praise or worship, you can't worship it. And I'm here to tell you, bullshit. That what else would it be when we think about my cup runneth over? How does my cup runneth over? It's because that's the continuous renewing of my own spirit. That is worship. That is worship. Let's go to the meaning of the word worship. The devotion accorded to a deity or to a sacred object. What's sacred mean? Characterized by solemn religious ceremony or religious use, especially in a positive sense. Consecrated, made holy. What's consecrated mean? And this is what I mean by study, right? Consecrated. And it's all right here. Consecrated to declare something holy or make it holy by some procedure. What? Exaltation. The quickening spirit, again, the getting out of my own way to discover my own true nature, one with the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, a quickening spirit, right? And to exalt that, how? Spiritual surrender to my own nature by getting out of the aggressive, assertive, dominant, and embracing the trust, the patience, the tolerance, and the just letting it come, right? In a way, that's what? Discovering what's already within me, right? Through surrender, through trust, through patience, right? Part of that is the sinking down through the layers that were, added to my psychology within Moloch's machine, and to finally moving through all of that enough, or allowing it to not apply to me again. Fight Club, to let that which does not matter truly slide. And then now I'm actually out of the delusion. So the only time I'm not in the delusion is what? When I'm in within my own energy sphere, the kingdom of God and love is within me style. And that's the only time I'm not in delusion. That's the only oneness is in within me. Where? Inside me. Religion tells you it's anywhere but inside of you. But wait a minute, I thought the book said the kingdom of God is within me. Oh, well, we think that may be a mistranslation. It turns out if you go back to the original Greek, it could mean among us. Well, I don't give a fuck. I'm talking KJV in English, partner. It says within me, inside of me. So I won't ever let them off the hook, because the religion, which is a business, wants to say, well, actually, that's not convenient for us. Again, that's an externalization. And I'm like, well, listen, I don't need you. You need me. What do I need religion for? You need butts in the seats. What are you giving me that I need? See, it becomes very transactional and pragmatic, right? So consecrate means also means to commit solemnly to some aim or task, right? And that's the process I'm describing here. And then holy means, let's see. And remember that the system will tell you there's no possibility of anything holy existing within you. It's not possible. Not the HOLY, dedicated to a religious purpose or a god, revered in a religion, morally perfect or flawless. See, here we go with holy. So the realm tells you, go out here if you're a Christian, and the Gospel of Paul says, well, go ahead and try to be Christ-like, but ha ha ha, try as you might, it's impossible. Doesn't matter how pure your intention is, you can't possibly do it. Well, yeah, if you view what I'm putting out on a timeline, by the way, BDB. The timeline itself is a delusion, but how about in the now? Am I really supposed to believe that I'm incapable of emptying myself and then the Holy Spirit or Christ consciousness can't possibly express via me in any new moment? How does the Christ consciousness or the Holy Spirit manifest? Perfectly, morally perfect or flawless or nearly so. So now, when we add the human or delusory aspects of a human consciousness and a human psychology, even the meaning of the word holy allows for the fact that, yeah, he's expressing Christ consciousness or Holy Spirit in this moment nearly perfectly. Right. Now I'm here to tell you I believe it's possible to do it perfectly. But now the Moloch's machine says, well, perfectly would have to be like Jesus supposedly did it, perfect in every moment of an entire human's life. When did I agree to that? When did I say that was the case? I'm talking about the only thing that we all agree actually exists to some extent is right now, and it's already gone. You're telling me in a right now that's already gone, I can't perfectly express Christ consciousness? Fuck you. I reject that on its face. I think just about everybody in a one now that's already gone, I say just about everybody's probably expressed it at one time or another, except for maybe the most evil and demonic, and infested with devils. It also means separated or set apart from something unto something or someone else. Is that not me within this realm, wholly by being separated or set apart in the moments I'm identified with my own nature inside of myself and not identified with the realm? Yeah. So it's right here in the fucking definition of the words. But then Benton's crazy. So then comes the gaslighting. Well, Benton's nuts. Benton's crazy. He's a blasphemer. He's a heretic. Yeah. Okay. We'll see. We'll see. We're going to see about that. And how's that working out for me? Great. How's that working out for them? Not so well. It's a prison of their own making. It's to be in. It's a trap of their own devising. Right. And that's just going through definitions of words with intelligence. Yeah, that's right. There you go, Razvan, signing us on to the system. Yep. Forgive them for they know not what they do. Yep. Birth certificate. And part of me signing up for the real ID is recognizing, looking at my and this is how the system works, looking at my social security card and going, this thing's physically not going to last too many more years. I'm going to have to replace this fucking thing. And my research indicates that the feds are going to require real ID. Forget about getting on a plane just to be able to get a new social security card. And then it comes down to, in the short term, sadly, I'm probably going to be still serving the system of business and death and Moloch's machine to some extent. It's a process of extricating myself from that as much as possible, right? And some of that is my own preference and my own weakness in a way. Certainly I could just drove my car to LA and just fucking burn the boat, they call it, metaphorically burn the boat and just said, fuck it. I'm done. I don't need an ID. I don't need a social security card. I don't need a birth certificate, you know. Well, yeah, and it was developed. That's the point I'm making, Razvan. I agree with you. He says some people are forced into a certain way of life. My ability or homelessness, my ability to choose it is a great skill. Yes. However, I agree with you. Yes. And I developed those skills. So I've had times when people would try to say, oh, you're lucky. And I said, luck had nothing to do with it. Like I made myself this way. And I know Razvan's not saying I'm lucky. I'm saying it's almost a version of seeing the writing on the wall and just saying, fuck it, I'll just jump into the deep end of this thing because, you know, what's the point of, doing everything possible and then at the end of the day, the system forces me into the pool anyway. I might as well jump in of my own volition, you know. Again, the only way out is through style, right? It's more of a strategic choice, I guess, on some level. So let's go to the notebook and then we'll probably get out of here. It's quite humid. It is Arkansas, so I'm outside and it is quite humid. But I don't want to yurt the stream, so we might be here for a minute. Oh, and I'll read this because I just opened this notebook and I forgot this was I had copied a portion of the KJV. Matthew 6:22, the light of the body is the eye. And I believe this is the spiritual eye or the third eye, but anyway. If therefore thine eye be single, which I take to mean some version of a third eye meditation, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? And I believe that's describing the subversion, the process of the subversion of the creative force. No man can serve two masters. And this I believe to be thesis or antithesis and the subversion of the creative force. For either he will hate the one and despise the other, and this is where we get into people hating God, hating their own nature, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon, or more correctly, Moloch's machine of business. It's one or the other. So if I take God to mean God is love and the kingdom of love is within me, and then I know at the level of true knowledge of self that that's what I am, to not serve that is to serve Moloch's machine of business and money and profit. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment? Which I think means clothing. Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your own essence, it says heavenly Father, which I don't even think is a thing, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? Which of you by taking thought can add 1 cubit unto his stature? And that's what I mean by I'm no count, I'm no reputation in this world. So that's dead. What can I do in this realm to make a name for myself that's lasting and has life? It's just not possible. And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. Wherefore, which is some way of saying, look, I'm what I am is already more beautiful, than all of these things. The nature of what I am. Wherefore, if God so clothe the grass of the field, which today is, and tomorrow is cast into the oven, interesting. It's dead. Why is it cast into the oven? It's dead. Shall he not much more clothe you, O ye of little faith? Therefore, take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewith shall we be clothed? For after all these things do the Gentiles seek. For your heavenly Father knoweth that ye have need of all these things, but seek ye first the kingdom of God, and then the kingdom of God is within me, and his righteousness that's within me, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Meaning, basically, it's bad. It's difficult enough to get through the fucking day, right? So why add to it? Anyway, let's get to the actual notes I took, I believe, yesterday. A lot of this is about unreality, which I think is very important, because in order for people to resist a lot of what I'm asserting around the delusory nature of the realm, it really can't be done unless the person is willing to agree to say, well, there's no unreality or surrealism baked into the cake. So unreality, lack of reality or real existence, the state of being unreal. Number two, that which has no reality or real existence, something unreal or imaginary. Imaginary is a key term. And then number four, unpractical character, visionariness. Again, imagination. So then we have disreality, a synonym of unreality, a real or perceived state of being unlike reality. So who's never, and then I put in parentheses, waking dream, right? And I don't believe there's anybody who is what I am who's never experienced um, a perceived state of being in something unlike reality. How many times have I just been taking a leak or whatever, and it just struck me how bizarre and unreal just this whatever this experience is. It's off the charts, unreal at times. You're just like, what even is this? I refuse to believe that I'm the only one that's having those experiences, and it's simply not going to be possible for somebody to logically, assert and make arguments for the actual for this realm not existing as a delusion. Because the only way they're going to be able to do that is to make the case that surrealism and unreality is just simply does not exist. And I don't believe that's going to be possible. Waking dream, a dream or dream, and that's actually it's in the fucking dictionary. Waking dream, a dream or dreamlike situation while one is awake or in the drowsy period before sleep. And then I was listening to some David Goggins, and he said of when he went out and he pushed himself to do this, he had to do 100-mile race in 24 hours to qualify for an ultra marathon. He wanted to run. It broke his body down so much that he was in some space, spiritually and mentally, like just beyond the possibility of all defeat. And what he said about that experience was it broke him down so much. He said, I became truth. There was no lie. Right. And that's some version of closer to actual reality, right? By self via what? Some version of a self-flagellation, or if you think about Jesus in the Bible, 40 days in the desert, like, well, or push oneself physically so hard, it's kind of compressing that into like one day, right? And he ended up doing 100 miles in like 17 hours or whatever. Unreal, lacking the characteristics of reality, right? Surreal means resembling a dream, fantastic and incongruous. Now, this is where we get into things that I believe the so-called truth community would never be willing to reject. Is if we look at the meaning of the word incongruous, then that points us to the meaning of the word. It means not similar or congruent, not matching or fitting in. Well, are you going to tell me that doesn't describe your life every single day? What I know of just about everybody in the so-called truth community is every single motherfucking day, an individual in the so-called truth community has a feeling of not matching or fitting into society. So see, we're already there by definition. So then we look at incongruous as not congruent. So then we go look at, we actually look at the meaning of the word incongruent. So so when we go from surreal, I can go from the term incongruous, and I can directly go to incongruent. And guess what is a meaning of the word incongruent? Incompatible, right? What I am is not compatible with a delusion created via the antithesis of what I am. By definition, what I am is incompatible with day-to-day living in this place. Incompatible, like part of a computer. Plug it into the fucking ISA slot or whatever. I used to build computers many years ago, or the PCI slot, and turn the fucker on, and no matter what you do, that piece of hardware will never work within that system because it's not compatible, right? Maybe it will start to power on, maybe it will start to perform certain functions. In the long run, it will not operate as it's designed within that system. That's what incompatible means. Then we get into, so incongruent meaning out of place. Are you telling me, truthers, that you don't feel that every single day that you're out of place in this realm? So please understand that's an affirmation of the realm by definition being delusion, right? Just your own feeling of being out of place. I can use the definitions of the words and say, well, actually, based on these definitions, you yourself are affirming the realm existing as delusion by definition. Oh, but I don't want to exist in a delusion. Yeah, I understand that. I would rather prefer not to either, but we're still seemingly here either way. So what's the difference? It's a preference. It's a preference. So inharmonious, out of place, incompatible, inharmonious, not congruent. Inharmonious meaning of behavior, events, ideas, etc., lacking accord or agreement. Again, that's me every day, right? Inharmonious in music. Now we get to, this is what I like with the tie-ins with music, is the idea of the word of God, or Christ consciousness as logos, and the idea in the Bible, right, of talking about the word of God going out of the mouth like a sword, right? This is, it's noting the power, the creative power of the sound vibration, right? Um, and in fact, creation itself most likely existing on levels of, again, if existence and everything here is actually vibrating energy, as science tells us, right? And again, people could say, "Oh, I reject science." That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying even science now acknowledges something that the Eastern religions and philosophies have been talking about for thousands of years, if not longer. Okay. And I'm here to tell you that my creative force that never lies dormant, when we get to the level of music and sound vibration, now we're to a whole nother level, I would assert. So inharmonious for music means not in harmony. Synonyms: disharmonious, unharmonious. Hypernyms, this is interesting, discordant, dissonant. Coordinate terms: unmelodious or melodious, right? So now we get into, am I able to sing the melody that's consistent with my nature within this delusion? And then now I'm spiritually attacked like I was at the laundromat day before yesterday. Or am I willing to, uh, inconsistent with my nature, sing the tune that allows me to get through the day within Moloch's machine of delusion? See? So now we're looking at what's the perspective or the frame of reference, right? So hypernyms, now we get into dissonant, right, or discordant. Now that can lead us to unaccordant, unconcordant, and accordant. Accordant is in agreement or agreeing, right? Well, I can't agree with this realm. It's a how can I agree with a delusion? What I am, my nature is Jack from Jack and the Beanstalk. I can't even conceptualize what a delusion or or what calamities could befall within a delusion. I can't even. I'm not even capable of fear. Full stop. What I am can't even fear, much less. Do you see how this has happened? Right. So, accordant is in agreement or agreeing, right? So that is what the kingdom of God or love is within me. That's accordant or agreeing. So the antithesis or the backwardness of the realm is no. Moloch's machine demands I must be in agreement with Moloch's machine, and thus there's the externalization by identifying with this realm of death and destruction and depravity. Always a mistake. Almost by the way. So discordant means harsh or dissonant sounding. And the reality is, when I speak all of this publicly to the demonized individuals that comprise the masses, their interpretation of my ideas is that they are harsh or dissonant sounding. Just like at the laundromat, when I righteously, you know, stood up for what was right and true in the moment, by what? By asserting the reality of what had happened, and then refusing to allow the other person to then say, well, actually, this is what happened, right? To what? To get me to sign off on a delusion he was creating in the moment. See, it becomes very subtle and nuanced very quickly. So to the people in the environment, other than who? The autistic boy of around 13 or 14, he was attracted to it, right? He was attracted to what to everybody else seemed to be harsh or dissonant sounding, right? Dissonance meaning a harsh, discordant combination of sounds, synonym cacophony, a state of disagreement or conflict. See, the dissonance is because by righteously identifying and expressing perfectly based on my nature in the moment, that was interpreted as a state of disagreement or conflict. And eventually the fella had to say, okay, I see what you're saying. He surrendered to true reality as being expressed on my behalf, but only after doing 3 laps around the mountain of attempting to get off. It's an offer. He's making me an offer to identify with a delusion he just created on the fly, ad hoc. That's what happened, right? And I'm going to have to wrap this up soon, but yeah, we're going to end on a high note here. So then that gets us to, once we get to dissonant, well, I start thinking of words like dissident. Dissident adjective in a manner that disagrees, dissenting, discordant. So the meaning of the word dissonant as a descriptor, it already connects to inharmonious, which I can bring that all the way back to surreal. I can go surreal. The part of the definition of surreal is incongruous. I can go incongruous to incongruent, which, and then I can go from incongruent to incompatible. I can go from, so if we go from surreal to incompatible, then we go from congruent to incongruent, right? Not congruent. Then that gets us to inharmonious, which then gets us to uh, a musical term, not in harmony, right? And then the hypernym discordant or dissonant. Once I get to discordant, harsh or dissonant sounding. Once I get to dissonance, a harsh, discordant combination of sounds, also meaning a state of disagreement or conflict. I got to a state of disagreement or conflict from the meaning of the word surreal within delusion. So then that gets us all the way to dissident if we're at least willing to start with the adjective or descriptor. Right now, remember, there's a noun form of dissident in a manner, and so much so Pearl Jam wrote a fucking song about it, in a manner that, and then now we're back to music, in a manner that disagrees, dissenting, discordant, right? And then I love this part. This is the realm sort of doing a thing here. Northern Ireland continuing violent actions despite a ceasefire, especially the Good Friday Agreement. Wow, that's a mind blower. Northern motherfucking Ireland. Uh, and if Razvan lives in the UK, he knows a little bit about Northern Ireland, whether he's been there or not. That's a whole thing over there. Dissident, noun, a person who formally opposes the current political structure. So if I look at Moloch's machine of business, industry, death, destruction, that is a political structure by definition, right? So what I am naturally opposes. So I am a dissident by nature of by definition, because of being willing, because of true knowledge of self and identifying on that basis. That makes me, from the perspective of Moloch's machine and the people who are identified with Moloch's machine, even if they know not what they do, I am, from their perspective, a dissident, a person who formally, just me saying these ideas is a formal opposition of the current political structure, aka Moloch's machine, the political group in power. That's not a Republican. That's not a Democrat. That's not Trump. That's not Biden's poopy diaper. That's Moloch's machine, is the political group in power. The policy, but within delusion, the policies of the political group in power or current laws, synonym dissenter. Number two, Christianity, one who disagrees or dissents, one who separates from the established religion. That's me. The current political structure opposes me. I am thesis. This realm is delusion born of antithesis. That's a note I took, right? And then we'll end on this. We'll give our flowers to King Stephen, something I wrote down based on something I heard King Stephen say. To quote King Stephen, true loyalty is almost impossible in this realm. Thanks for watching. Bye.